Hello, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the film. We have a real treat for you now because with us, I'm Afua Hirsch, by the way, but the person I know you're really excited to see is here somewhere. I could have sworn he was. Hopefully, my magic trick is about to conjure the one and only writer and director of Blitz, Steve McQueen. Woo!
Thank you. Thank you. God. I kind of had to do that because it's a bit like, oh, I'm there.
It was quite a magical film, so I feel like a magical entrance was fitting. Steve, tell us the origin story of Blitz. A fun fact, I once read that there are approximately 50 TV and film projects about the Second World War produced in Britain every year. And I don't think I would have believed it would be possible to make one so unlike anything I'd seen before until I saw this and realized how much we needed it. So I'm really curious about the origin story. And was it daunting to stray into an area that is something of a national obsession?
Well, again, it started, as we all, I imagine, if people grew up in London or know London, it's all around us, but it's sort of the invisible history of the past. But I think it really came to prominence for me in a way when I was a war artist in 2003. I went to Iraq and was embedded with the troops. Again, it was just one of these weird situations where you're sort of in theatre, as they call it, on the ground. And of course, majority of us in this room, have no idea of what a war actually is. I mean, again, how we get sort of introduced or how we know about war is through the media. The TV, obviously, the phone, your computer, your newspaper. It's very graphic. It's very graphic. In fact, it's very abstract. So to be, on the ground with the troops was really kind of odd, and doing tours of duty and all that kind of stuff was, helicopters to oil fields and whatnot, and seeing whatever. So it was really kind of a bit confronting, and also being with the troops from Glasgow, Swansea, Southampton, Hull, Manchester, Liverpool, all over the country, and having this sense of camaraderie was wonderful. The troops complaining about the kit and buying stuff off the Americans, and it was really kind of I felt the first time a sense of nationalism in some ways, a sense of it's like playing for England and being with your mates. And again, what was interesting for me about that time was it was quite perverse because I was at war, but had these kind of feelings. So I thought, what would it be like to bring this home, as it were, 1940s and the Blitz. And I was doing some research on a series of films called Small Axe. And as I was researching it, I just came across this image of this boy, this black child, this boy. Obviously, a child, obviously, again, it was one parent must have been white, one parent must have been black, but this black child, and he was going to be evacuated. And I just looked at this child, and I felt so protective of him. He's so cute, so sweet. And I wanted to protect him because I knew what could happen to him, whatever would be sort of, would be dangerous in one way or the other. That was all. Yeah.
It'd be so tempting to editorialize about the erasure of the stories of black children like him, but instead you really tell us his story. I mean, it's really from a child's lens, a coming of age story.
Yeah, it's very matter of fact because it's very matter of fact. I mean, again, it's about what happened rather than sort of erasure of it. And I just knew. I mean, interestingly, of me casting Paul Weller, because Paul has he has two black children, and again, I knew when Paul would embrace that child to sort of send him away, and he looks in the doorway knowing what the perils of that child will have in the broader wider society away from the nest. So it's very important to sort of get this authenticity of who that child is, and to surround Elliott the actor with a sort of kind of a family who could be sort of seen and felt and heard. And again, the solace, we could talk about music in the end at some point, but yeah, it's very important to have that atmosphere of a home and a nest, them leaving the home.
And how real was that? The actor Elliot Heffernan, how did you cast him? And he hadn't acted before, I read.
No, he hasn't acted before at all.
Remarkable.
No.
It's such an incredible performance.
Yeah, he was in Aladdin in a school play, apparently. Keeps on saying. So yeah, you sort of, you write the screenplay and you think, oh yeah, what? And you think, oh, God blimey. Does George exist? Does this kid exist? And I worked with Nina Gold, a great casting director, we put an audition out there. And lo and behold, some tapes came back, and I saw this kid. This kid looked really pissed off. Like he didn't want to be there. And he had this, when you see, he had this magnetism to his face. You really wanted to sort of know what he was thinking, or you couldn't not look at his face. And these beautiful big eyes, which were kind of like just look at you. And we used to have staring competitions. The guy doesn't blink. He will stare you. And again, again, you see, obviously you've seen him in the picture. There's a weight to him. There's something going on. And he was extraordinary professional. It was amazing. And yeah, I thought he was like a silent movie star. You just looked at him and you wanted. At a certain point, I imagine, I saw him and I saw myself. He reflects you as a child. Wow. You see him as, when you have a child, the parents out there, or people who have had children, have contact with children, and they show you a leaf, like now in the autumn, they show you a leaf. And I say, leaf. Oh, it's a leaf. Oh. It's almost like you see a leaf for the first time, don't you, through a kid's eyes? And that's what I wanted with Elliot, you to see the world again through a child's eyes.
That makes me really curious about what kind of child you were. Were you the kind of little boy who would jump off a train because it was taking you somewhere you didn't want to go?
I would, and I tell you why. As a black boy, child, and grew up in London in the 80s, as someone who had a lazy eye, who had the kid in your school had the patch over his eye with the glasses, that guy? Okay, that was me. And having dyslexia. So you have all these disadvantages sort of put on you, but at the same time, I had to really believe in myself. I had to think, again, I could draw. That's the one thing, again, I could draw. I could always draw. That was my salvation. Art, I could draw. That was my salvation. So, that was the thing where, again, I imagine a lot of people here in this audience have this situation. I hope, at least. Do you know when you're put on that train, your journey is laid out for you. This is this person. That's him. It's a situation where you could change the narrative of who people think you are. And I think that's what happened. That's what happened to me, at least. I changed the narrative of what was laid out for me. And I imagine a lot of people here have as well. You in some ways, you have to, at a certain point, you, and you have to change the narrative that's presented to you. And I think that's what George did. George literally was put on the train to go from here to there, but he said no. He said no.
The whole criminal underworld story was so fascinating and an unexpected turn. And I was astonished to read how much of that was based on facts. No. And I thought the Cafe Royale scene was beautiful. And apparently that was the actual song that was being performed when it got bombed in real life.
Yes, and are there any children in the audience here tonight? No children, thank God, like I said.
Because I was swearing as well, so.
I made a mistake the other night. Oh my God, Elliot was there and I made a mistake. Moving on, I'll tell you why, you understand what I'm saying. Because that song, Oh Johnny, obviously is about an orgasm. It's about, oh Johnny, how are you going to? And that song was actually played when the bomb dropped on the Cafe Royale. Because, okay, there was a sexual liberation going on. It was people living life of Riley and, dressed to the nines, eating oysters, while there was rations going on. So it was a different kind of criminality going on there in the Cafe Royale. There was Snakehips Johnson, the black guy there, openly gay man, the band leader. He based himself off of Duke Ellington. He lived with a well-to-do white guy, openly gay. There was a situation of this, again, there was a liberation in some ways within war, where, again, there was this guy, obviously, there's a guy called Hutch. I imagine some of you will know him. He used to play at the Cafe Royale. Cole Porter wrote Just a Gigolo for him because he was a gigolo. And if you find out about Hutch, you'll understand who he encountered, people that moving on swiftly. So it was a real kind of, a sort of a place where you know, again, there's lots of different kinds of situations of I would say, criminality or class or difference or unfairness when people were sort of suffering, you know, surviving as such with rations. London, the Blitz was so wonderfully complex. So when I did the research, it was just, I mean, it was like, okay, science fiction as such. Wait, really? This happened? Wow, it was a wonderful textualized environment. And I thought, oh, so this child could take us through this city, and we could see what the Blitz was like, you know. And again, the racial makeup, you know, there was a huge Chinese population in London. Oh, okay. And there was a black population. There was an Asian population. There were 3 black clubs of 7 dials near the Donmar Theatre. So again, London was a little bit more, you know, complex or complex, not complex, much more interesting than what has been portrayed in pictures. I mean,
and there is a complexity to the portrayal of that, because on the one hand, and you spoke to it in your experience as a war photographer, that sense of people coming together to survive this, the Blitz spirit that we still cherish, I think, as part of the national identity, but also not shying away from the fact that this was not a utopian society. There was still racism, as we saw in the bomb shelters. There was criminality. People were really chopping fingers off to get the jewelry from corpses. I loved the way that you allowed both to coexist. It felt very real, and usually it helped me understand how much I think we're often used to seeing a romanticized version of that period, where either it's all terror or it's all community spirit and cohesion.
Yeah, and the bad people are not necessarily so bad. It's surviving, you know, is criminality, you know, necessity, poverty, you know, and people. I mean, again, you know, everyone was on the make during the war. I mean, everyone was, because that's how people survived. And I think that complexity just gives a much more interesting sort of reading of who we are, who we were then. Again, it's for me, it was about excavating a reality that hadn't been visualized and needed to be told. I mean, we know more about the Tudors than we do about what happened during the Blitz. And again, don't forget, this is a real sort of liberational moment. It's more liberating than the 60s, because people were doing things they would never thought they would be doing, because people were in boxes. And in the war, for example, like women, you know, again, getting out of domestic situations, going to factories, you know, working, you know, finding each other women, and, you know, finding a camaraderie within that, and finding that they, you know, that what they did. Again, they were emotional, physical, and emotional background of the country. You know, looking after elderly parents, evacuating their children, working in ammunition factories, working in aircraft factories, and, you know, holding the country together. You know, really, and again, this has never been given a platform. You know, and it's important, because half the war effort was sort of, you know, women were holding this stuff together. You know, and when men came back with the post-stress disorder, you know, they were still holding it together.
Yeah. Let's talk about the cinematography and some of the scenes that you created, like the flooding of the underground station. Is that based on a true story? And how did you do that? It was just incredible to watch.
Yeah, that was, is it Bethnal Green? Was it Bethnal Green? I think it was Bethnal Green.
Was it Balham?
I apologize. I've just got so many things going on. As you know, the movie's got a lot of information.
A lot.
Balham. So what happened with that, and the person maybe in the audience could tell us as well, help me if I'm wrong, but no. What happened, there was an explosion, and a crater was formed, a bus fell in the crater, and it broke a sewage pipe and a water pipe. And therefore, the people who were in there, this is the true. Everything was true. They locked the gates because there was too many. They didn't want people any more people in the underground. And when it was flooded, obviously people were taken down. People were. What happened exactly was that a 9-year-old boy, and I think the gentleman died about 8 years ago. He was the one who squeezed through those shutter gates to rescue people.
That's a true story.
True story. Yeah. So I just used George. I mean, you know, that was it. You know, to do exactly what happened, and what happened was there were some people who they couldn't obviously get out, and they were buried there, and they just obviously they dug around it, and that was it, and filled it up, and that was it. Concrete.
Well, what were the challenges of recreating a scene like that?
Well, that was amazing with Adam Stockhausen, you know, the production design. That was like an engineering feat. I mean, it's something that I wanted, but of course you can't sort of flood an actual, you know, tube station. So Why not? So we were very lucky in Leeston. There was a pop-up studio, which was still there. So we just built this beautifully, beautiful, again, this beautiful curved railway platform station, tube station. And then we could pump the water in there and then pump it out, suck it out and pump it out. Again, there's a huge irrigation sort of feat, which Adam sort of got into, and again, seal it, because it was this tube on scaffolding. It was amazing. It was incredible. Yeah.
Would it have been different without your first-hand experience of the visceral nature of war? I'm thinking as well of the opening scene with the fire hose. You just don't, as a casual observer, you don't imagine those kind of challenges during the Blitz. You just think about the bombs dropping and the fire starting, but it felt like you had such a level of detail of what that would have felt like.
Yeah, and Tommy dying on the railway tracks, the train coming the opposite direction. A lot of shit happens in war, and it's not just because bombs fall or people get shot. A lot of crazy things happen because of war. And I think, again, these firemen with the inadequate, again, fire equipment, the hoses were made of canvas. They leaked. They couldn't control the water pressure. Again, these things happened. Again, and the chaos of it. Again, like I sort of described it before, of fighting a fire-breathing dragon with a water pistol. It was the physicality of it was really. It was very brave, of course. And again, these things. So many things happen in war. I mean, again, and it's like. You just blame the war. You don't blame necessarily the enemy. You blame the war, whatever the war is. And again, we're in a situation where outside these four walls, the whole world seems to be on fire. It's Sudan, Ukraine, Libya, Lebanon, Israel, Palestine, whatever. I mean, this film would have been, urgent at any time, but it just feels. I feel very useful as an artist right now. I feel very useful that it's come out now, actually. So but that's the nature of war.
Yeah, and thank you for making this intervention. It couldn't be more relevant. I have so many more questions, but I want to share with the audience. So I think we've got about 15 minutes for your questions. So please do raise your hand if you have one, and if you wouldn't mind waiting for the roving mics. We've got one on either side. So you could just raise your hand clearly so I can see you. Yeah, this lady here. And I will fit in as many as you can. I can fit in more if you're concise in asking. So that would be much appreciated, because there are quite a few people who'd like to ask something. Hello.
Hi. First of all, thank you. I'm still processing the film. I don't think I've been this scared in the cinema in a very long time. And speaking about that emotion, the threat, the sense of threat and danger is really present throughout the film. And I feel the score and the sound design really play a part in that. And I was wondering if you could share a bit about your process.
Thank you very much. Well, interesting, I just jump in, because Hans Zimmer did the score, and Nicholas Britell did this on-screen music. I'll tell you a little bit about Hans first, and I'll tell you a bit about Nicholas. So Hans's mother was here during the Blitz. She was evacuated from Germany during the Blitz. And she lived in Mayfair, on top of a building in Mayfair, would you believe? And immediately after the war, she got evacuated. Well, she didn't evacuate, excuse me. Immediately after the war was finished, she went back to Germany immediately to work as a translator for the Americans. Excuse me, for the Americans. And then there is where she met Hans's father. And when Hans was born, it was great. But when Hans was 5 years old, his father died. And then Hans, I think, went to boarding school then. So I knew all this stuff actually when Hans did Widows, when we did score for Widows. So I knew all this stuff, and I thought at a certain point, I said, well, I wanted the dynamic duo of Nicholas Britell and Hans Zimmer, which were the two people who did the stuff for 12 Years a Slave. But I knew with Hans's history, I thought, I said to Hans, well, if you do this picture, maybe I think you'd get to know your mother better. And I think his back was up when I said it to him, understandably. But when he saw the movie without any music, he rang me up and says, "Miraculous, I know what to do," and that was it. Put the phone down. It's okay. And then then he started to write, and I sat. There's a place here in London, and he started to write the music. I was shoulder to shoulder with him when he virtually wrote all of it, because we were going there, but he was just do it. But he was just things which were in him for such a long time. I think that separation, that abandonment, that was huge. So the beginning of the picture is an orchestra of recorders, and then obviously it sort of amalgamates orchestrally further on. And of course, he was very experimenting also with the ammunition factory, with the women working on the bomb, which I think is fantastic. I mean, I just think it's just the masculine, and women is getting on with it. You know what I mean? I just love that power and that femininity, and like, fuck you, yeah, we're getting on with it. We got bombs, sort of thing, and like, it's just amazing. And yeah, Hans was in it, and in the boys on the train. I mean, goodness gracious. So yeah, he was. I think, me personally, I think it's one of his best scores. Absolutely, I know that for a fact. He'll admit it to me secretly. And Nicholas Brutel, of course. So Nicholas, again, I'll do quickly. So the music, of course, we were talking. Again, we did this song called "Brighter Days," which was sort of based on my father when he died 18 years ago. He left me his winter coat. I like the idea of putting on a coat as a keepsake. Everyone has a keepsake, as an embrace. So that was very important too. So myself and Nick, Nick mainly, he said to me, well, we don't want to do normal songs. We don't want to do songs that people know. We should invent the songs, because it could be, it's a bit too on the nose as such. And if it's songs where we write, where it's more similar to what was going on, like Sunny Side of the Street, we wrote Brighter Days. Other things which was sort of tomorrow is going to be better, all that kind of stuff. I think it would sit better in the sort of reality of the picture. And I think when you hear a song that it kind of takes you out of the picture. So hearing something that that's a ditty, you think but it's actually not. It's written for the picture. It brings you right into it. It becomes a reality of that world, rather than taking you out.
Thank you so much for the question. Great question. Okay, yes. Next, there's one here, and then I'll take one from this side next. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, I live in Wapping. It was quite a night when you were filming there with the searchlights and the explosions.
Sorry.
But in a way, it was for somebody who grew up after the war, but was so, your lives were full of war, weren't they? The comics, the toys, everything. It was more ubiquitous than you actually sort of thought. But what I wanted to ask you about was, you made the film about Amsterdam and the war, and this other city, London, and this film. Are they completely separate in your mind, or how did the two sort of interplay? Or did they not at all? I'd be fascinated.
One place is where I grew up and sort of shaped me, and another place is where I live. But the thing, both of them, comes from childhood, comes from children's perspective, because of course, my childhood and living in London, we just spoke about a little bit of, again, changing one's trajectory and whatnot. And in Amsterdam is where my children were born, and again, they go to school where, where Jewish children were separated, and a place where people were kept and people were murdered and taken from their houses. So, you walk around the streets there, and it's like it's again with Occupy City. If anyone saw it, it's a documentary about it's based on a book that my wife wrote called Occupy City 1940-1945, and she goes through virtually the entire city of Amsterdam with important addresses and what happened there. So yes, in some ways there was a relationship in a way, because again, the only reason I'm here is because of the Second World War. My parents were invited to sort of rebuild the UK. So it was definitely something which is. Sorry, I'll just go on. But it was more to do with who we are and what we've become, and how far have we come from a certain point. How far have we moved on? And you think of what happened, unfortunately, over the weekend with these fascist marches, 20,000 odd people. I don't know. They said that, and then what happened last summer with the race riots, and then you see exactly what was going on there in this picture on screen. Have we moved on? I don't know.
There's so much we haven't processed. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, one over here. Hello.
Hi, Steve.
Hi, man.
Joanna. Nice to meet you.
Sure.
Thank you very much for your project. First question.
We might only have time for one. Just
Okay.
Warning.
Very shortly, but please answer for two. What was your favorite scene in your film? And second one, about your future projects, connection with Israel and Palestine. Is there anything in your mind? What would you like to create and the story?
Well, the first one, I don't have one. The second, the second question, I just want there to be peace. I'm not thinking of, making some artwork out of that. I just want to get peace on that situation. That's what I would like, peace. And the whole thing is something which, it's a journey, isn't it? It's a journey, and not a scene that you couldn't separate one from the other, really. So that's it, yeah. Good. Can we have one more question?
Yes. Is there, I know there were loads of hands at the beginning. One right at the back, up there. While the mic's getting there, though, it did strike me how much this humanizes war. I mean, I think sometimes we turn away because it's too big and too painful. But telling a story through a child's perspective is such a way of forcing us to.
Also, it's to do with perspective. It's to do with, again, George is that high. And it's like you put the camera, everything's 3-4 times as big. Like you're going back to a school playground as an adult, and it's bloody small, but it's massive. Everything's massive.
It's huge.
Two parents have an argument for the child. It's the worst thing in the world. It's massive. So again, I'm not saying it was bigger than the war, but through a child's eyes, it becomes pretty absurd. And that's what it was. It was like his eyes, for me, were like a sort of a hall of mirrors where you think, what is going on? This is just bizarre. Sorry, the question.
Hi, thank you.
Hi. I just wanted to ask about inspiration in how you told the story. You mentioned that it was very much a story told through the eyes of a child.
Yes.
And for me, it was slightly reminiscent of things all the way back, like Oliver Twist, and then films like The Journey of Natty Gunn, and a lot of child adventure films from the 1980s. I was just wondering if there was a sort of style or a way you wanted to tell this story.
Not a style, a fairy tale. Brothers Grimm, dark, that's what it was. And the whole idea of Oliver Twist is a situation where, George Heffernan isn't Oliver Twist. How you see George Heffernan is not how you see Oliver Twist. How George Heffernan sees an apple isn't how Oliver Twist sees an apple. If you notice in the film, the only people who recognizes George are either other people of color or the authorities. Now, in that case, Oliver Twist would get a pass. So again, it's about the whole idea of a fairy tale, particularly Brothers Grimm, is that we're not going to sort of, again, we're not. Sometimes some parents talk like a child to a child. Brothers Grimm, they don't do that. They're very adult to a child. They're going to be honest. And that's exactly what I want to do in this picture. I didn't want to cover any. I didn't want to put anything over his eyes. I wanted to be honest. And the whole idea of the comparison isn't the comparison as far as Oliver Twist or even whatever is concerned. Just because, of race, and it's huge. Every single war I just mentioned is about race. Wake up.
Amen. Steve McQueen, thank you so much. And thank you for the brilliant questions. You've been a great audience.